Hello, class. I'm sure that you are in the process right now preparing for your exam three, which will be actually your final exam for this semester, which is great. So I'll keep the lecture for this week brief. Last week we talked about improving interpersonal relationships, and then this is the last portion of this section in which we're going to talk about professional relationships. So, from a lot of the feedback that you guys have submitted, on Canvas, when I asked about your personal experiences, a lot of you guys go right to your professional experience and start talking about that. And I think that's great. And it shows me, number one, that you guys are processing and internalizing the information uh, in your response to questions. And number two, that a lot of us are working students. So a lot of us have jobs, families, friends. We're balancing a lot of different things. And professional relationships is a major part of our lives. If you look at it in a full time job, we're actually going to spend 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week with the people we work with. And often, a lot of times, we'll see those people more than we'll actually see our family members. So, learning how to have productive professional relationships is essential to having a happy and productive life. So, we're going to look into that and investigate this as we go through this chapter. So, let's talk about the nature of professional relationships. What does the term professional mean to you? So I'll allow you a second to kind of think about that. So we define professional as anyone whose job requires expert knowledge, specialized skill, or a certain level of diligence. And if you look to, according to a study, professionalism in the workplace study, professionals actually exemplify these four qualities. They have interpersonal skills, including civility, so that comes down to communication, appropriate appearance, which is nonverbal communication, punctuality, and regular attendance, which is also nonverbal communication, and then communication skills kind of sums it all up. Now we have superior and subordinate relationships. Over to the left hand, you'll see, well, then it was NBC Apprentice. I guess I haven't really updated this because it should say Republican presidential frontrunner Donald Trump, and you can see that he is smiling there. It's his usual look, and we'll look at relationship power types. Okay, so we have the superior, which have formal authority over productivity and the behavior of subordinate people. So think about it. You have superior, which are officially in charge of your work. Then you have subordinates, which provide key information about themselves and their resources that are necessary in order for a company to get its job done, right? And when you're looking at superior and subordinate relationships, it's really important to understand that because it affects communication dynamic. Think about your job. Have you ever had somebody who you're on the same level with? Maybe you got along with them and established a friendship with one of your coworkers, and one of you get promoted, and not only just promoted, but promoted to the extent that you supervise the work of that other person. How does that power difference, the fact that they're your supervisor, maybe you're their supervisor, how does that affect your communication? Are you more receptive? Are you less receptive? Power dynamics have a huge influence of how we actually communicate. All right, and if you look at a guy like Donald Trump, how he communicates, very confident, and a lot of that confidence comes because he's in a position of power, right? To where if you're a subordinate, you may not talk the same way. Something to really consider. Its study shows that effective supervisors establish trust and build rapport through caring and giving useful feedback. So there's a lot of studies. There's a gentleman, he's a professor at Arizona State University. His name is Jeffrey Cassing. He's a professor in the communication department at ASU, and what he talks about is he does a lot of studies where he monitors people's overall job satisfaction with their ability to be able to express dissent. And from his studies, he shows that people who are able to sit there and speak up when something's wrong and when they're unhappy with something or working conditioning is not fair and they have that mechanism to talk about it without fear of being punished, they're actually happier employees and they actually stay longer. So think about that as you move into leadership roles in your own career. How can allowing your employees the ability to communicate and express concerns or frustrations they have can actually help them help your company and lower turnover, because it's always hard when you have a high turnover rate in your company. So that's something to really consider. And there's also coworker relationships, interacting with somebody who has little or no official authority over your work. I know from my experience, my professional experience, I've had coworkers who actually feel that they have official authority over my work, and that's always a interesting conversation to have, to remind them that they don't. So, and then lastly, we have customer relationships, which is interactions between someone communicating on the behalf of the organization and individuals who are external to the organization, which also affects communications. So now we're looking at professional communication challenges. So when you're working at a job, it's not all about work. I'm sure you can all bear witness to that. There's a lot of other stuff, politics, drama, that gets put in the workplace that you have to carefully navigate through in order to have a successful career. And it's been my experience professionally that people who cannot navigate through the drama and all the stuff that goes on, and they succumb to that, those typically are the people who have a harder time getting promoted and moving up than people who stay clear of that. Now, that's not always true. There are some people who don't get involved in the drama and the gossip, and they end up suffering for it. But for the most part, it's been my experience that people who stay away from that actually do better. So let's talk about how you can stay above the fray. So a rumor is an unverified story or statement about the facts of a situation. A gossip is a type of rumor that focuses on private, personal, and also scandalous affairs of other people. So, who is dating who, who's hooking up with so-and-so. These are all things that are gossip, right? So let's talk about strategies for managing office gossip. First of all, don't spread malicious rumors, all right? You don't want to be that person who goes around talking to everybody and nobody can trust you. You definitely don't want to have that reputation. Second thing you should do is evaluate the reliability of the gossip or rumor, right? And then when others gossip, change the subject or state that you prefer not to participate. One thing that's important, I'm sure you guys all know this, but I'll say it anyways, there is no loyalty in gossip, okay? They're gossiping to you simply because you're there. As soon as you turn back, they're going to be gossiping about behind your back too, and it's important to know that. Consider the potential consequences in divulging confidential information. Before disclosing to your coworker, assume your secret will be shared by others. So it's really important to know your environment and to make sure you're keeping your information in confidence. If you believe gossip has created a serious problem, talk to your supervisor immediately. So these are just some tips for managing office gossip. Oh yeah, we're talking about workplace romances. So you can see in the picture on the left, it seems like they're quite familiar with each other. So workplace romances occur between two members of an organization when sexual attraction is communicated and reciprocated. I'll say that again. It's communicated and it's also reciprocated. If you worked in the workplace long enough, you know of people who have started developing romances in the workplace. Maybe you have in a relationship as a result of a workplace romance. So how do you navigate that? We're going to talk about that. So according to a recent study, 40 to 60% of employees admit to being involved in a workplace romance. I mean, that's almost, if you split 40 and 60 down the middle, that's one half of all employees admit that they have actually been romantically involved with somebody in the workplace. And it's not because they have nothing else going on in their lives. I mean, look at the reality of it. Look at the amount of time that they spend in the workplace. Look at the amount of time that we all spend in the workplace. And there is a theory of attraction, and one of the major keys to finding somebody attractive is proximity. Studies show that we're actually attracted to people who are close to us, right? So if we grow up in school and we spend a lot of time at school and we spend a lot of time around different students and stuff like that, then it's very well likely that you can develop an attraction to somebody who you see every day in class. It could be like that in elementary school, high school, even college. There's a lot of people who end up meeting their husband or wife from high school, or their sweetheart from high school or college. So something to really think about. Approximately 1/3 of all romantic relationships begin in the workplace. So every one of the romantic relationships that we see, 1/3 of them originate in the workplace. So there are some complications of workplace romances, and think about it before you get involved with somebody. Think about it. So this is a link, and if you go to the PowerPoint, where I actually have the PowerPoint slides loaded on the file section of Canvas, you can actually bring up this PowerPoint and look at it and click on this link that says workplace romances. You see how that's underlined? And it will give you a monster.com. Here's what can happen and here's what to consider if you choose to fall in love with the workplace. So it could be great. I've seen a lot of great stories, but I'm sure if you work long enough like I have, you know that it can also be a disaster too, especially when that relationship doesn't work out. All right, sexual harassment. So before we get into sexual harassment, let's look back at what we talked about in the previous slide. That workplace romance is when sexual attraction has been communicated and reciprocated by the other. Sexual harassment works different, okay? So flirtation, come-ons, and the workplace, it's kind of commonplace, but to the extent that it's deemed unwanted or undesirable, and it still continues, is when you cross a line over from flirtation to actually sexual harassment. So workplace romances are two people who communicate and reciprocate. That's one of the most important words. I can't stress that enough. Reciprocate sexual attraction. But sexual harassment refers to unwanted sexual advances, inappropriate verbal or physical contact of a sexual nature resulting in hostile or an offensive work environment. Also, this also can include, because I've seen this happen, dirty jokes, right? You have a couple guys telling some offensive jokes and the presence of people who might be offended by it. That's also another form of sexual harassment as well. So you really want to be mindful of those things. Sexual harassment is rarely an isolated incident. So on the test, you're most assuredly going to be asked these questions. You're going to need to know what sexual harassment is. And there's going to be, I'll just give you a hint. On the test, it's going to say, sexual harassment is typically an isolated incident, true or false. The answer is false. Okay? It's usually not a one-time thing. So if you think that somebody is sexually harassing you on your job, and you're like, oh, that's just Tom, it will blow over, he won't ever do it again, you might be underestimating what happens, because it's usually a pattern of misconduct, and it's important that you nip it in the bud. So let's talk about how to nip it in the bud. So if you experience sexual harassment, let your management know immediately, okay? First thing you want to do, if you're experiencing harassment, is if you feel comfortable, go to that person and tell them, hey, listen, what you're doing, it makes me feel uncomfortable. Now, if it's your supervisor or somebody you're afraid of, that they have direct power over you and they can punish you for not going along with their harassment, then you need to find a superior person that oversees their work and talk to them. And some jobs have ombudsman, where you can actually not give your name and just say, hey, here's the situation that's going on. I just want to make you aware of it. But make sure that if you're afraid of actually talking to that person, let the management know who that person reports to, that's going on as well. The reality is companies today lose a lot of money in sexual harassment suits. So now more than ever, a good company will have policies for it, and they will try to enforce it. Some companies won't, and unfortunately you have to navigate your way through that the best way you can. So what do you do when you're leaving a job? I kind of like this picture. I picked this one out. I think you guys can see what it is to the left. It's a burning bridge, right? Has anybody ever told you don't burn your bridges, right? It's really important not to do that, because you never know when you need to cross that bridge again. And if you're sitting there at the water cooler or around the coffee pot, telling everybody that you got such a better opportunity, screw this place, I'm out of here, they never appreciated me, it's gonna fall apart without me. If that is your narrative, you might be setting yourself up for failure. And I'll tell you this, and that doesn't come out of the book, but it's just my advice to you for what it's worth. A person once told me this that I really respected. They said, how you enter one portion of your life will determine how you enter another. I'll say that again. How you leave one place in your life will determine how you enter another. You can look at that from an interpersonal perspective. If you leave a relationship sloppy and everybody's hurt and you're angry and everybody's insulted, if you leave something horrible, when you walk into that next relationship, all that stuff's gonna carry with you. If you leave a job in complete strife and you're pissed off at people and you're rude to people and it's complete turmoil, it's not all going to get solved with a new position. And if you work long enough, you've seen this before. People leave their jobs, they talk a bunch of trash, right? And there's a lot of strife on their job, and they're like, oh, I can't wait till I get this new job. They get the new job, and all that crap follows them, right? So you really want to be mindful of how you leave a job. And let's talk about some ways to do it professionally and with dignity. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the average American will change jobs 9 times before the age of 32. Think about that. Some of you guys might have older uncles or grandparents who worked for the steel mill, and that's all they did, right? Or you'll have people who worked for, if you're from the Midwest, maybe your parents worked for GM or Ford or Chrysler, and that's all they did. All right, those days are done. Okay, a lot of people have a bunch of different jobs before it's all said and done, and so changing careers is normal, but you got to learn how to leave a job appropriately. So when leaving a job, follow the company's policies and procedures when resigning. Inform your immediate supervisors of your plans first. And I know it's tempting to go to your boy on your job or to go to your girlfriend and be like, oh my gosh, I got this new job, I'm so excited, I'm out of here, it's what I've always wanted. But please have enough discipline and have enough courage to not do that. You owe it to your supervisor. Go to them first and let them know. Resign in person, but also write a brief resignation letter. Give the appropriate advance notice. And that's important because some jobs will walk you to your door. So where if I've been employed in jobs where if you tell them that you're going to give them a 2-week notice, they'll sit there and say, okay, well, you can leave now. So there have been jobs before, and this is just me, it's my personal opinion, but there have been jobs before where I've just had to leave and work up to the day where I'm like, okay, I get paid on this day. Let me work up to this day because I know that they're not going to allow me to work a 2-week notice. And then what you should tell your other job is they'll say, hey, when can you start? If you know your job may or may not do that, do not promise the job that you're going to that you'll start 2 weeks from now. What you should tell your upcoming employers, like, hey, listen, I'm at a job right now. They may or may not walk me to the door if I give my resignation. If in the event that they do walk me to the door, can I start on this date? Does that make sense? That way you're not going a huge portion without the job. If a job starts on a certain date, then you might want to work that job up, the job that you have up to the point where you can't anymore, and then you can resign and then go to your next job. But if they allow you to do a 2-week notice, you should do it. Phrase explanation positively and watch your attitude. So don't be, gossiping and telling all your coworkers what a horrible place it is and how it's going to crumble without you. All right, you got to have a little bit more maturity than that. And it will serve you well, because remember, how you leave one area of your life determines how you enter another. All right, let's talk about job interviews. So job interviews. Couple key things. I'm sure you know this, but in case you don't, make sure you take note of it because it's going to help you out in life. If you can do these things, you'll get a lot of miles out of your career. Research the organization. Assess your strengths and weaknesses. And I know that's kind of hard, but you need to do it because they're going to ask you that in most typical interviews. You want to practice interviewing either with a friend or somebody you trust or another professional. Think of relevant solution-based examples. So when they sit there and they ask you, give an example of a difficult customer you had to deal with. What did you do to resolve it, and would you change anything? Hindsight. All right. Don't sit there and give an example of how you had a customer who was upset and you gave them the options, but they didn't like it anyways, and so they stormed out of the place and swore never to work there again. There's no solution in that story. All right. So those stories you don't want to ever use. If they ask you a question like that, you want to find an interaction that ends positively to show that you took something that was bad and you made it good. I served on a lot of interview committees. You would not believe how many people don't get that. And so that's important to put in your cap and use it when you need to. Do a drive-by. Okay, so before your interview that weekend, swing by that place. That way you know where it's at, you know where to park. So I find that to be very helpful. Dress appropriately. All right. There's a debate on whether you should wear cologne or perfume or not. Typically, you don't want to wear that because people can be sensitive to your cologne or to your perfume. So make sure you watch that. And you want to dress appropriately for the interview. So you guys, you want to dress. If it's a construction position, you might want to dress in khakis and a polo. But if it's a company that you're going to work for, like a bank, you might want to wear, a shirt and tie. Ladies, I don't really know what you should all be wearing, but I'm sure you have a friend who's a professional that will help you out. So make sure you access that. And then leave for the place early. We talk about communication and time, and I tell you what, if I'm on an interview committee and the person who we're interviewing shows up late, I don't care what they say. I already have a negative opinion of them that they can't overcome. So come to the interview early. Be waiting there, and that shows that you're serious about your job. So during job interviews, make sure you look you're professional looking, and be likable. Smile. Have a good attitude. You may have to. I'm not saying you have to crack jokes, but be pleasant because they really look for that. And again, convey a positive and confident demeanor and temperament. Convey your ideas and opinions clearly and persuasively. And then make sure your actions and mannerisms are appropriate and professional. Provide relevant examples. We talked about that. Take time before you answer questions, so don't feel like you have to just talk first and think second. Okay, it's not shoot first, aim later. If you don't understand the question, or if you don't have an answer quite articulated out in your mind first, tell them, take a second. Hey, I need to take a second. I want to think about this. And then when you have your idea formulated, then go ahead and speak. That will help you out a lot in interviews. Be sure to answer each question completely, succinctly, and always make sure you're providing examples because employers really like to see that.